Hello, my name is Nandi Soccer and I'm here to talk about Dragon Age lore. Hello and welcome to a new video of the Dragon Age lore series. This week, as requested by Instantiate This, we will talk about what we know of the Tevinter Imperium. Enjoy! In the year -1595 ancient, Thalcian, a very powerful mage, claimed that he communicated with the old god Dumat and learned the art of blood magic from the old god. He used his powers to enforce the position of mages as a ruling position, and eventually the whole land was ruled by mages. As the empire grew, more and more elven scouts were spotted in the Arlathan forest. Not after long, a war erupted and Thalcian used powerful blood magic, demons and dragon thralls to sink the elven city and took all remaining elves as slaves. Bolstered by the new numerous elven slaves, Tevinter grew even more and more powerful and started to brutally conquer more and more lands in the name of the Imperium. From Rivain to the north to Ferelden in the south, all fell to the might of the Imperium. By this time, the Tevinter power was incomprehensible. It was at the peak of its power when a civil war took place between two influential magisters. They started fighting for a vacant Archon seat, which marked the ending of the golden era of the Imperium. Shortly after, several magisters gathered ungodly amount of slaves for blood sacrifices, along with 2/3 of what the Imperium had in Lyrium, in an attempt to physically enter the Fade as per the instructions of their dragon old gods. Later, the old god Dumat rose as a corrupted archdemon and led the hordes of the Darkspawn in what is now known as the First Blight. Eventually, what is now known as Ferelden broke out from under the rule of Tevinter, led by Andraste and her husband Mafereth. Rivain would also soon follow as well in the year -120 ancient, backed by several cities of the eastern marches in what is known as the Battle of Temerin in the year -53 ancient. Currently resides to the northern parts of Thedas. The great and ancient Tevinter Imperium sits proudly on the shores of the Nosen, Vilification, and the Colian Sea, ruled by powerful mages called the Magisters. The Tevinter culture is known as one of the most pro-magic cultures in all Thedas, as the Magisters are free to do whatever they will to do, with minimal or sometimes no consequences. Vilified across the ages for being responsible for the fall of the elven nation of Arlathan and enslaving the once proud race of elves, adding to being blamed for the blight when allegedly the 7 magisters of the 7 old gods breached the walls of the Golden City, corrupting it and rendering it the Black City, bringing back with them the blight, the source of the major evil that threatened Thedas every other century. In ancient times, Tevinter was the most powerful nation on the entire continent, but some factors played a major role in the decline of such power. The Orlegian chantry calling for several exalted marches against the Imperium, along with the arrival of the Qunari from the north, all played a key role in the decline of the Tevinter Imperium, even though it is still until to this day a very heavy player. There is a mutual disdain between Tevinter and the rest of Thedas. While other nations view the Magocracy of Tevinter as heretical, corrupted and demonized, Tevinter views the rest of Thedas as barbarian and savages who lack proper respect for traditions. Therefore, there is minimal to no writings or books about Tevinter outside of its borders, as who would want to learn more about the country who brought the blight upon the world. Even with the fall of the worships of the old gods, and the cult of the Maker making more progress in the hearts of the people, dragons are still considered sacred and one of the most prominent symbols of the Imperium. The political rule of the Imperium is known as Magocracy, a pool of the most powerful noble mages known as Magisters, who spend as much time scheming for more power as they spend for the betterment of their people. Sitting at the top of the Magisterium is the Archon, who has the absolute power over it. He can appoint new seats and have the final say regarding the laws imposed by the Magisters. His title is usually inherited, as they can pass their titles to their sons, brothers, nephews, or cousins. If the Archon dies with no heir, the Magisterium chooses someone for the title. Previously, the new elected Archon was supposed to be from the Magisterium until this was banned in the Black Age. Now, the Archon must be elected from a pool of people who have never held a seat in the Magisterium before, or even a rank in the Chantry. Being an Archon is a gift just like magic. It is bestowed upon a person by a divine gift. This divine god changed throughout the times, from being given by an old god to being given by the Maker. As stated before, the Magisterium is the ruling body of Tevinter. There are several paths one can take to reach a seat in the Magisterium. For example, usually from the ranks of senior enchanters of the 7 circles of the nation, a mage can be appointed to hold a seat, although first enchanters are banned from ever getting a seat. The seats could be inherited if the Magister dies, and their heirs would be a Magister. Archons reserve the right to appoint whomever they see fit for a seat on the Magisterium. Also, every Grand Cleric on the Imperial Chantry has a seat by default, as does the Imperial Divine of the Chantry. The social classes in Tevinter are 4, 2 of magical background and 2 of non-magical background. The magical ones are the Altus. The Altus are the magical descendant of the dreamers of old, the very first mages to commune with the old gods. Even though the worship of the old gods is obsolete, the weight of the dreamer is still respected to this very day. Most of the upper crust of the Tevinter nobility are Altus. Right after the decline of the old gods and the rise of the cult of the Maker, a lot of Altus were vilified, as the most powerful of them was said to be turned into the original Darkspawn when they preached the Golden City. And most of them were hunted down and killed when the worship of the Maker was on the rise during the Transfiguration. But when the conversion to the Maker's religion was complete, the Altus slowly but surely gained back the ranks within the Tevinter society. Leatans are also mages, but lack the blood connection to other mages of ancient bloodline of dreamers. They are born to non-mages parent or have minimal to no blood ties to anyone with magic in their families. They work twice as much to prove their magical prowess against the Altus. Third of the Archons during history were known Leatans. The other social classes which doesn't have magical backgrounds are the Soporati. They are non-mages, mundane people of the Imperium. They can own land, serve in the military, but they do not have any say in the matters of the ruling of the country. If a mage is born into a Soporati family, the whole family is elevated into Leatan rank and given more prestige within the society. It is fair to say that the Soporati look up to the magical ranks within Tevinter. The last rank is the slaves, previously overwhelmingly elves. There are a lot of humans and other races that are slaves in Tevinter currently. They are not allowed to own any land or serve in the military. Most of them are very skilled workers, but they are not allowed to be merchants or artisans. Some slaves can be freed by a judge with the presence of their master, who has to verbally announce their desire to free their slaves. Or upon a master's death, a slave could be freed as their last will. Although they are free now, Ex-slaves, also known as the liberati, cannot join the military, but they can own properties and join the circle of Magi or train to be apprentices. Same-sex relationships in Tevinter are not forbidden, albeit hidden, and is only there for pleasure and not real long-term relationship. Transgender people are not shunned or officially vilified, but having them among the upper crust is considered scandalous. In the military, on the other hand, the rules are so much more strict, and military roles are assigned to people based on their biological sex.
The alliance with the chief's people didn't work out. He hasn't said anything, but he's feeling it.
I wanted to talk about you, if that's all right.
You know, I'm from Tevinter. Wasn't a slave, but even citizens have it rough if they're not mages. I was a soldier, but women joined the ranks under a different program. When they found out I was passing, it got ugly. I ran, met Bull near the border, and ended up here. Not a life I'd wish on everyone, but it'll do.
What's Tevinter like for a citizen? Someone who isn't a slave or a mage.
I'm of the Separati, citizens who aren't mages. Mages are in charge and everyone knows it. But a wealthy merchant can have an easy life. At the low end, people just try to stay out of slavery. My father was a tailor. I joined the army after the Imperial slaves drove him under.
How did slaves drive your family out of business?
My father made shirts, aprons, that kind of thing. Nothing fancy. One of the Magisters had a pet project to prevent the poor from dying of cold in the winter. Nice, right? He had Imperial slaves making simple peasant clothes and selling them for almost nothing. That Magister's nice idea put out slave-made clothes at prices my father couldn't match.
It's difficult to compete with someone who doesn't get paid.
That's Tevinter. My father sold himself into slavery. He's one of the Servus Publicus, the Imperium-owned slaves now.
You said you left Tevinter when they discovered your secret.
Women are allowed to serve, but only in certain ranks and disciplines. I was up for promotion, but the healer I'd bribed to sign off on my physical had to tend to a sick magister. When the replacement healer saw what was or wasn't in my paths, he made threats. It was slavery or death, so I knocked him out and ran.
It's against the law to pass as a man.
It's a crime to lie on an Imperial application for service. Would have been a heavy fine or slavery. For 10 silvers, the healer said he'd tell the Tribune I was sick in the head. Some pity for the mad little girl. That was when I hit him. I'd served for a few years. I was good at hitting.
Why did you decide to live as a man?
I didn't decide anything. I've been like this my whole life. My parents wanted me to marry up. They tried to find me a nice merchant's son. Every day, put on a dress, look into my father's shaving mirror, and just hate myself.
If you had the chance to use magic, would you change all the way?
What? No. I don't want any magic like that within 10 yards of my body. When I was younger, I don't know. Everyone has silly dreams. In Tevinter, dreams like that get you killed. Bull helped me make a good life. Nice armor and a well-placed sock, and I'm happy.
How did your family react when you started?
My mother wanted to throw me out. She said if I didn't marry well, I was dooming the family to slavery. She was happy to take the money I set as a soldier, though. Not that it mattered in the end. My father. When I was little, he'd angle his mirror down so I could pretend to shave, just like him. He never said anything, but I think he knew.
We'll talk later.
The great city of Minratha's citizens have the right to brag about their home city's reputation of never being conquered before. And rightly so, the city rests on a rocky island, being connected to the mainland with only a bridge that can be easily destroyed if the need arises. A great port and shipbuilding facilities are huge, and the city catacombs beneath the island is vast and deep and can carry enough food to sustain the city for a whole year. The Minratha's embassy, one of the wonders of the world, is said to be constructed by Darius himself to serve as a guest house for the dwarven king Inrin's Stonehammer. Another world wonder is the central arena in the middle of the city, known as the Proving Grounds. Built as a triangular prism, The outer of the arena is covered in plants that contrast the overall theme of stony Minrathos. The Minratha Circle of Magi is the second oldest building in the whole Imperium, formerly known as the Temple of Razikael, and it shows the wonder of ancient architecture. Although the First Blight took its toll on the city, Minrathos is still known as the biggest city in Thedas. Dwarves are the only nation who have good relationship with Tevinter. For 2,000 years, this relationship prospered and grew. The juggernauts built by the dwarves at the entrance of Minrathos are evidence of that. Many surface dwarves live in the city of Minrathos not as citizens, but more of foreign dignitaries. The only difference between Tevinter dwarves and anywhere else is that the Tevinter dwarves have their own branch of government. The ambassadorial is the dwarven representatives, elected by the dwarves to advise the Archon on all things dwarven. Little but Lyrium sustained the relationship between Tevinter and the dwarves. Without it, the Imperium will literally collapse, as many buildings and wonders are built and maintained by magic. All the dwarven ambassadors in Minrathos, Neromanian, and Ventus, formerly known as Carinus, spend their time in the subterranean embassies built specifically for them. Technically, they are still within the stone, so their casts are preserved even after spending years away from their original ties. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments if there is a specific topic that you need next week's video to be about. Thank you again and see you next week.